Good evening, everybody. Natasha Harper-Madison here. I'm happy to see you. I'd like to wish you a happy Friday evening. You and I, all of us together and I, have seen quite a week, but I cannot say how happy I am to be the Mayor Pro Tem for District 1 in East and Northeast Austin. Welcome to another edition of our biweekly talk, our biweekly live stream, Talk with Tasha. We're coming at you every 2 weeks with critical conversations about the issues that matter most to you. Things were a lot different the last time that we were here 2 weeks ago. That Arctic blast was just bearing down on Austin at that time, and we were all just getting ready for what was going to happen. Turns out that wallop really waylaid our statewide power grid and kept millions of Texans in the cold and dark for days on end. Here in Austin, frozen pipes knocked out water service across the city and forced a boil water notice that also lasted for days. Although Austin Water has lifted that notice and resumed normal operations, thousands of residents still don't have running water for drinking, bathing, and for flushing toilets. This has been an evolving crisis that the city has done its best, but is still in the process of responding to. So last Friday, my office and I worked with several nonprofit groups and other community members to launch an improvised emergency supply distribution effort at the Millennium Youth Entertainment Complex at 1156 Hargrave, right in the heart of Central East Austin. After serving thousands of Austinites in need, we handed the keys of the operation over to the Black Leaders Collective on Wednesday. That effort is finally wrapping up tonight, but there are many other resources that will continue to be available in the days and weeks ahead. Later in the show, we'll be talking to some of the people who helped to set up the Millennium for success, and we'll discuss ways that they themselves need their own help. But first, for the second time this year, my colleague from the Eastern Crescent, Councilmember Vanessa Fuentes, is joining me. Are you there?
Hi, everyone. Oh, hi, Mayor Pro Tem.
Hey, so I had a little glitch. I'm glad you were there. So Vanessa and her team, Councilmember and her team, have been working just as tirelessly as me and mine to make sure that our people affected most by this incredible crisis weren't literally left in the cold. And like me, she's also focusing now on ways to use policy to make sure that our Austin residents are better positioned for when the next big challenges come. Again, thank you for joining us. I'm so happy to have you again. I mean, who knew we'd be talking this much this year? But I could not be prouder to have such clear, concise channels of communication. You're brand new to the council for all intents and purposes. What a baptism of fire that you've had. So I just appreciate you always consistently being open for conversation and for the necessary pivots. I'd love for you to be able to talk to the folks that are tuning in this evening about your personal experience during the freeze, the outages, and us getting prepared for the days to come.
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem, for having me on here. But most importantly, thank you for your leadership and your relentless drive and tireless commitment to serving our community. There were a couple of days there where I felt, oh my gosh, I'm so exhausted. I don't think I can continue on. And then I would look and I would see you online out there in the community posting what you were doing. And I thought, okay, I can do it. We can rally. And so you personally inspired me, and you certainly have set the standard for service and are an exemplary public official. And I'm just so thrilled and grateful for your leadership and everything that you've done for our Austin community. And so to get to your question, I think first and foremost, like many Austinites, I started asking myself, am I on critical infrastructure? What is on critical infrastructure? Talk to me about the circuit that I'm on. And like many Austinites, navigating the power grid is a brand new subject area, and one that I never expected that I would be tasked with tackling within the first 6 weeks of taking office. But what has gotten me through the power outage and the water outage and the severe winter storm and its aftermath is the community. Hearing stories of how our community have really rallied together and helped each other throughout this ordeal has been truly inspiring. And having neighbors post on neighborhood groups and Facebook pages. I have diapers if you need them. I have milk if you need it. And just seeing how we all came to each other's aid has been really great to see, and has given me a lot of hope and humanity. But also on the flip side is seeing the human toll and the suffering that this severe winter storm has caused. I've talked to neighbors here in Southeast, some who are still without water. So even though it may seem on the outside, with our weather, that we have made it through the storm, the reality is that that's not the case. And we know here in Austin that disasters do not affect everyone equally. And in Southeast and District 2, we were able to mobilize very quickly when the storm first began, and set up warming centers and overnight shelters, mostly because our community has been through disasters before. We've had the deadly and catastrophic floods of 2013 and 2015. So we kind of had a system in place where we could pull from and model off of. But even then, there's room for improvement and understanding of, just how much more infrastructure, more resilience we need to build as a community. And with the climate crisis, that topic is more prevalent now, more so than ever.
I appreciate that very much. And so I because we were in so many ways, we were in lockstep, I think I remember distinctly where I recognized it. And I think I may have recognized it in you, but I won't speak for you. I'd like for you to talk to some folks just briefly about when it was that moment where you realized that this just wasn't a historic cold snap. This was a crisis, and it was going to clearly require some unprecedented improvisation on our part to respond and to make sure that our community and our neighbors got the help that they needed. Can you refer to a distinct moment where you knew you were going to have to, like you just said, a little over 6 weeks in, make that decision to be present and respond to something that has never happened before, frankly?
Yeah, for me, it was when we stood up the Mendez Middle School Warming Center, and I tried to, with my husband, make it out there to the center to check it out. And I started to see the severe ice and the snow. I mean, when in Texas do we have inches of snow, first of all, and then seeing the ice and just seeing the state of our roads. We couldn't even get over there the first time. And I knew then, like, oh my gosh, this is a huge, huge storm. This is a severe storm. Its implications are going to be many. Of course, it was hard to anticipate that the storm would lead to power outages, which would lead to the boil water notice. And then now without water, that was definitely unanticipated. But now as a policymaker, I know that you and I will be tasked to make sure that it never happens again.
So yesterday, a lot of folks, I think, in watching us do that sort of disaster relief, which I think is just instinct for us, right? We're going to respond to the needs of our communities instinctively and effectively where we're able to, but we also have to remember why it is that folks elected us. And so yesterday we had to put our council hats back on, and we held a special call meeting to discuss the crisis and our response to it. From a policy perspective, I'm wondering, how are you able to tackle both these conversations around climate change and climate reality, and most importantly, climate justice moving forward? Are those the conversations you and your constituents are starting to have, or probably continuing to have? And if so, can you speak to that briefly?
Absolutely. And, I did have a moment during that meeting where I thought, my gosh, like I wish I was in a better headspace at this moment to come forward with policy proposals and initiatives on what we should do when we move towards recovery. But you and I both know, for our communities, we are still in disaster response. We are still providing immediate resources and relief and assistance for our community. But I know that in the coming weeks, we will be shifting into recovery mode. And with that, the programs and policies that I'm looking at is what type of assistance can we provide our community in navigating these systems, and navigating applying for FEMA relief, and navigating how to secure funds for home repair, how to ensure that your landlord repairs your pipes and doesn't charge you an arm and a leg. Those are the things that we need to be looking at. But I want to make sure that the city is working with organizations who are bilingual, who speak multiple languages, that can help our communities navigate the system. Because we know that this system isn't set up for people like you and me. And we have to ensure that whatever we have out there, that it truly is inclusive and that it meets all the needs of our community.
I really appreciate that. You know, you and I were on a call earlier today where we had the opportunity to talk about some of this climate reality subject matter. And one of the things that I said during the course of the call, and you were nodding your head feverishly, you know, when we talk about climate reality and climate reality justice issues, oftentimes it's not the things that people assume when we're talking about climate change and climate reality. It's things that you know are present but don't recognize what it represents. So one of the things that we're definitely going to have to be looking at moving forward, like I said on the call earlier, climate reality for us in a lot of ways, the way it manifests is with respiratory issues, people being unable to breathe. And that oftentimes is a matter of their lived environments. And so we're talking about, you know, the spaces that people are in that are going to be recovering from having issues that cause and create mold and mildew. And so we're talking about exacerbating some of these issues with asthma and other respiratory issues. So as we're moving forward with that conversation, I really hope that me, you, some of our other colleagues get the opportunity to expand on the conversation around climate reality and climate justice, and make sure that we're not missing opportunities to make certain that the people that we're talking about outside of access to food and water, being able to breathe in your home is also an emergency and also a crisis. And so I really look forward to, I really appreciated watching you nod, because I think that was you saying, you know, I also have, you know, recognized that this is a need that we're going to have moving forward, and we all need to be paying attention to it. If we could just close it out with that and then kind of move forward into some of the other folks, that'd be great.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your leadership, Mayor Pro Tem, and I look forward to working with you.
I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for you and your team. It's one of those things where I think sometimes when people offer us credit and are giving us love, it's not that we're declining the edification, but the truth of the matter is, without our teams, without the people who are helping to prop us up, we wouldn't have anywhere near what it is that we need to be able to respond to the call. So thank you, but also very much thank you to your team. We really appreciate you. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, you too. All right, y'all. So last week, at the very least, last week was trying. Last week was traumatizing for so many. Power was out, temperatures were freezing, uncertainty and anxiety were all over the place. The crisis manifested a tremendous amount of need for essential life-sustaining items, basic food, water items. Even as temperatures warmed back up, we were a city that was still brought low. I mean, we were sitting there watching the sun come out, and some of us hesitant to appreciate the sun shining because we recognized we were still in a mode of responding to a crisis. That's why it was incredibly uplifting to watch the community response. Countless individuals, organizations, businesses across Austin and across the country stepped up to make sure that our neighbors were taken care of. At the Millennium last Friday, my team and I, we worked with 3 local music industry groups to set up a food and water distribution effort at the Millennium in the heart of East Austin. There were people who have held one of the shortest ends of the COVID pandemic sticks. People who have been unemployed or underemployed for nearly a full year now. We've got faces from each group here tonight to talk about why they did that, and to also bask in a little bit of that bottomless gratitude that I will publicly say here now, but I know so many of us feel. From Austin, Texas musicians, we have Scott Strickland.
Good to see you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Hey there, good to see you again. The Texas Music Workforce Coalition's Jason Teresina. Thank you for joining us. Good to see you. And Jeanette Greger from the Amplified Sound Coalition. These music industry folks, when I tell you, we very quickly became best friends like Austin does. We looked at one another. And one of the things that I was, you know, you couldn't overlook the way they moved to the purpose. You could tell when the music folks showed up, because there was a certain pace, a certain hustle that the operation started moving with. And so you knew exactly who to go to when you had questions. I really appreciate all y'all being here this evening to just kind of round out this conversation and make sure that we, one, continue to respond to the immediate need, but also let's keep this same energy and make this a movement and not a moment. And I want to make sure that we all are a part of those continued conversations. So that said, I'm just going to be shooting out some questions, and y'all answer as you see fit and as you feel like, you have something to contribute to the dialogue. But just generally, I'm going to say music industry folks, and you guys just jump in there. What professional skills were y'all applying when we were watching that hustle mode take over the course of the weekend and throughout the remainder of the week? Anybody, feel free to just there.
I would say keeping people entertained while they're waiting in their cars for us to distribute food. I know that Jeanette, Amplified Sound Coalition, she had the PA out there, and I think that really kind of turned the energy just completely around. Mayor Pro Tem, we were dancing around to the Isley Brothers at one point. So it was just keeping people engaged and lifting spirits and doing it through music, ironically. But that's what that was for me.
Thank you. Anybody else want to touch on that one? Because I know that there were, well, I can appreciate that. It was right on time. I know that, just by way of training, the things that y'all have to deliver to the jobs that you do, I know that there is something that we can speak to. If for no other reason, I want people to know that these are things that you can start to get training and be looking at as developable skills, So I saw a lot in the way of project management. I saw a lot in the way of crisis management. I saw, and Scott, I think this might be what you were speaking to. I saw that ability to take an assessment, do that, sort of emotional critical needs assessment and see where people are and make sure to keep the vibe moving in that direction so that we were continuing to be productive even when things were kind of heightened. Those are the kinds of things that if we could just name 3 things, if one of y'all could rattle it off. Like I said, I already said project management. What are the other 2 critical skills that y'all were bringing to the table that I watched them manifest?
For sure, we're in an industry that focuses on customer service, right? So we create experiences for large groups of people. So that translates not just to the people that we're serving, but ourselves. We work in very, very intense conditions. I've had tornado warnings come through festivals that I've been working. We've had to evacuate because of lightning and, dust storms, you name it. So, safety is always going to be number 1 in our industry. But honestly, it's what experience are we providing to the folks that are coming to see whatever the band is or whatever the festival is. And that translates to venues as well. And obviously to musicians. But what kind of experience can we anticipate for ourselves and our coworkers? When you're in the middle of a 15-hour day, sometimes a little bit of music or a goofy dance or just like a word of encouragement is critical to your well-being and your coworkers' well-beings. And it's just something that we, I think, know inherently and within ourselves is how we survive in our industry.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I know there were a couple of folks who witnessed some goofy dancing and some, just downtime. And without context, maybe that could be taken offensively. But contextually, we're talking about folks who've been here all day and all night, who have been physically lifting and lugging and doing this work. And just to take 1 minute to have something that's even remotely joyful was very helpful. Jason, we haven't heard from you yet. I'd like to ask you directly, if you don't mind. As we are having these conversations, I'd like to know, the pandemic, for all intents and purposes, is really kneecapped our industry, y'all's industry. What can the city as a government or just as a community, what can we be doing to help lift y'all up and to lift up so many who were helping to contribute? And let's just continue what we just did over this last week. Oh, did I lose you?
Yeah. From the city government, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. From the city or government perspective, we could use some help in with our job board, getting our paperwork through the jobs where we have at TMWC. Also, furnish ways for our people to write resumes, to translate, to articulate our skill sets that you described, to other industries, because we know the music come back and fits and starts. So people need work, and we need to be able to articulate that sets and all the other skill sets.
I think you might be chopping up on us
that
a
may
tiny
not be easy
bit
for us as individuals to be properly.
Hey, Jason, I wonder if, try to turn off your video. You're chopping up just a little bit. And one of the things that I want to make sure that we don't lose, I think you're talking about workforce opportunities. And so just to be clear about, one of the things that your organization does, y'all are trying to make certain that we don't miss any workforce opportunities. But we kind of missed out when you were saying, I want to make sure that Caleb catches it, and I want to make sure that we hear you clearly. I think we might be having a tech issue. Sometimes when folks turn their video off, we can hear them better. I wonder if you could turn your video off real quick and repeat what you just said so we can make sure to hear you clearly. I think, okay. I think we might be having a tech issue. I can hear you okay. Can you hear us okay? Mic check, mic check.
Can you hear me?
Perfectly. So you were just talking about from the workforce perspective, you were talking
I can't hear you. Sorry. But defer to Jeanette.
Okay.
Did he just defer to me?
We did, yeah. I think we're having a sound issue. More or less, though, this is the kind of information. So because we have been kind of a hub for information and pumping it out, people are watching our socials. And so if people are watching our socials, this is the kind of thing that we can follow up with them on. But to Jason's point, I think what he was just trying to say is we're making certain that, I think people make some assumptions about everybody being able to be gainfully employed and producing beautiful music. A lot of y'all have jobs outside of that job. And so just making sure that folks are recognizing what it is that I think he was just speaking to, in that we're still trying to make sure to keep people gainfully employed. And so if there's any, resources that we need to make sure to blast out, that's the kind of thing that we can connect with y'all on later. You don't have to be able to speak to it now. Just want to make sure if you could help me, by way of just reiterating that y'all are in fact a group of people that are helping to advocate for folks, not just for the right now, not just for the artistry, but also like just getting by and having jobs, gainfully employed, good paid jobs, and where we're able to with some benefits of some sort. I think that's the kind of thing that folks would really like to be able to hear about if we could speak to it briefly. Otherwise, that's the kind of thing we can circle back if we need to.
Sure. So I was actually on a call with Jeanette, who called me at random, and we talked for almost an hour, and it was a really great phone call. And I don't want to steal too much of her thunder. And Jeanette, maybe you can pop in here with me. But the biggest thing that it's all Jeanette's idea, and it's an amazing idea. I'm not going to say too much of it because she might kill me later. But just get everybody vaccinated.
You go ahead, Scott.
No, just stagehands, artists, like it would be the most amazing thing in the world if Austin was like one of the first cities to have everyone mostly vaccinated. So, and if we can vaccinate stagehands, if we can vaccinate musicians, if we can vaccinate artists, if we can vaccinate workers, these are the people that we're having to scramble around and kind of find different jobs. We're like arm wrestling with the Texas Workforce Commission, here and there, and there are so many things that we're trying to figure out. Again, with musically, trying to figure out how to pivot. You're a venue, you're trying to figure out how to stay open. There are so many things that we can do if we could just have a strong infrastructure to get artists vaccinated. And that came from Jeanette earlier today, and I just think that it's a genius and an amazing idea, and I'm sure it's more arduous than me just sitting here talking about it.
Well, I tell you what, you're not the only one sitting here just talking about it. It's a thing that's already in play. So the Trail of Lights Foundation, we've been trying to pump out the information that they're producing. They're offering good paid jobs, $20 plus an hour, to get those types of folks, and folks outside of the music industry, frankly. If you have the skills that you think would be appropriate to put yourself to work in these circumstances, to get folks vaccinated, that is a project that folks are working on. We've shared it a couple times, but we'll make sure to share that again. So I absolutely agree that we have so many opportunities, not just because it will be beneficial to the members of our community, but because we can do things in a way that's innovative. And we may not be able to, as a city, move very nimbly, but our adjacent, support systems, they can, in fact, move nimbly. And I think we have that opportunity right now to be the template for how other cities respond. I think I might be having some.
I think we find ourselves collectively in the same position that y'all are in government, which is we're tired of being reactionary. We've been in crisis mode and just scrambling to make sure people's rent is paid, make sure they have food on their tables, make sure that, to speak very frankly, our industry is in the midst of two major health crises right now. We have a global pandemic, and then we have a mental and emotional crisis on our hands because we don't have a date. We don't know when we can go back to work, and our identities are so intrinsically tied to what we do because we're all in a creative industry. When people ask, what can city, state, or federal governments do for us? First and foremost, my message is always see us and help us. We survive off of a variety of small to large businesses, festivals, and events. It's actually a lot like what we saw when people were bringing in donations this week. It's not just one company. It's not just one very easily identifiable or quantifiable industry. For example, the airline industry. We can just pump a bunch of money into the airline industry, and there's very clean channels that can go down to support all of their workers. We're gig workers with some of us 3, 4, 5 different career paths. And so it's, I won't apologize for us being a difficult labor force, but I would hope that we're recognized for what we do for the city and for the state and for the country, which is make places appealing for all of the big tech industries and real estate industries and development. So, first and foremost, see us, then help us. We are a massive workforce, especially in the context of Austin, the live music capital of the world. And we can be tapped for all of these things. We can do vaccine distribution. We can do as much, disaster relief and recovery as we're asked to do because we want the work. We want to be seen for the value that we provide to our community. And we love our community. The people that are clinging to Austin aren't staying here because of the work, because we still don't have work. We're staying in Austin and we're clinging to this community in this city because we love it, because we all moved here, or we were, brought up here and came up here with a respect for a particular soul or spice, if you will, for the city. And that's its music and its entertainment and its art and its culture. And just the thought of that going away and really removing the soul of our city is terrifying for all of us. Two of the people you're talking to right here started coalitions in the midst of it because of that fear. But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because, we are being seen now and we are being tapped for more of this. And I'm hopeful and grateful for the opportunity to put our folks to work, give back to the community, and then come out stronger and with more strength within our music community on the other side, whenever the other side.
Absolutely. And this is one of those times to recognize, having people in our communities that are multifaceted and multi-passionate. That is a benefit. That is not to our detriment. That is to our benefit, because that means that we can apply those skills broadly. And I really appreciate that very much. Is there anything that any of y'all want to help us close out with? We promised folks we'd keep it short and sweet this evening. I really appreciate everybody being here. Is there anything that we missed that you want to make sure that we highlight before we take our leave? They're unfortunately going to keep hearing a whole lot from Team D1, and y'all are going to keep getting tapped. Thank you very much. Appreciate y'all being consistent and being present. It's very helpful. Is there anything that we missed, or can I go ahead and bid y'all adieu and say thank you again, yet again, one more time for showing up?
I, from the bottom of my heart, a huge thank you to you and your team. I mean, talk about keeping people, not just motivated, but I mean, you've reinstilled my faith in government. So that's huge.
Awesome. Thank you for saying that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Mayor Pro Tem, thank you for coming down with the hammer of God. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
I appreciate y'all very much. This has been a group effort, and there's no level of contribution that deserves any more praise or respect than any other. I mean, this really has been, and I appreciate that you said that, Jeanette. It's one of those things where it really does restore your belief that we can collectively collaborate and make sure people get the things that they need. And then all the other sort of yucky human tendencies, around ego and id self, I really didn't feel that. And I'd like very much to keep moving in the direction of it just being comprehensive response to disaster relief effort and nothing else. Keep all the other yucky human stuff out of the conversation. I appreciate y'all all very much. Jason, Scott, Jeanette, thank you all very much. I look forward to a time where porch margaritas are a thing again, for people to do safely and responsibly. And we're going to talk about that time in 2021 where we all met one another dancing to Frankie Beverly on the steps of the Millennium Youth Entertainment Complex. In the meantime, I want y'all to all take care of yourselves and make sure, don't hesitate 1 minute to be in touch, as we need to keep continuing these conversations around responding to our community's need. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, folks, we promised y'all we wouldn't keep you long this evening. We know it's been a long week. We've already established that it's cliche to say that we're facing unprecedented challenges. Now it's cliche to say that we're facing unprecedented challenges. I don't know who came with it, but someone told me the other day that they were ready to switch it up and start facing some precedented challenges for a change. I don't remember who that was. Feel free to hit our DMs and let us know so you can get the credit. But that really resonated with me. It's been an excruciatingly long 2 weeks, days for all of us. Some of us far more than others, frankly. I've spent the better part of the past 8 days out at the Millennium watching with my own eyes an awesome display of neighborhoods helping neighbors. People from across Austin, across Texas, across the nation showed up for a community that had been kneecapped by a cascade of disasters. It was a love and joy and grace experience, and exactly what the doctor ordered after more than a week of anxiety and trauma. We have put essential supplies, food, water, diapers, period products into the hands of thousands of Austinites in need. That effort is wrapping up tonight, but the community-driven spirit behind it will fuel some similar efforts moving forward. This community spirit is manifesting itself across the entire city. There are so many people, organizations, businesses, individuals that deserve to be recognized. Black Leadership Collective, the Austin Latino Coalition, Austin, Texas Musicians, the Texas Music Workforce Coalition, the Amplified Sound Project, World Central Kitchen, Austin Mutual Aid, the Red Cross, Tito's Vodka, Still Austin, Rambler Fizzy Waters, Cilantro, Meals on Wheels, the Austin Firefighters Association, Community Resilience Trust, Black Austin Coalition, We Can Now, some organizations that I hadn't had the opportunity to actually meet before now, but I'm meeting now and seeing the need that they're meeting in our communities. And I really am just scratching the surface. So if I didn't specifically, the Austin Area Urban League, Survive to Thrive, even as I'm saying that, I know that I'm leaving some out, y'all, but I'm just sort of rambling them off. Please do not take that as any lack of appreciation. Black women in business, the 10,000 fearless first responders. There's no lack of appreciation for the work that you've produced, provided, and continue to offer us the opportunity to work alongside you to collaboratively bring to our community. But that's just scratching the surface. If I left you out, you're not alone. I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to do a better job moving forward to comprehensively acknowledge and recognize everybody, because I think it's important. Austin Justice Coalition, you see, they're still coming. So you are in the company of countless others whose work has lifted this community up. I also need to recognize the amazing work of our city employees and other partners have put in, my team included, my colleagues' teams included. But if I may just take a moment of privilege, Team D1, y'all showed up and you keep showing up, and I can't appreciate you more. I couldn't appreciate you more. There are people who have helped keep critical operations going through this emergency, even as they themselves were experiencing power and water outages. Our public information teams, the staff at our emergency operations center, anyone who didn't have electricity and had to sit in their freezing cars to charge their phones and answer emails, our first responders who were out there in the bitter cold and on icy roads working beyond overtime to help keep us safe, the energy and water workers feverishly working and driving through snow and frigid winds to reverse outages that the city was experiencing and frankly has never seen before. People at our hospitals, county workers, Capital Metro operators, and their staffs. I really could go on with this list all night, and that tells me two things. One, we need to have all that information in one comprehensive location so we know who to tap next time. But two, we need to also know who to offer our recognition and our appreciation moving forward. This was a crisis all of us went through in one way or another as one city. It's an opportunity to remember that we are stronger when we stand together than we are when we sit apart. And we're seeing that strength in this recovery effort. But it's also an opportunity to remember the unaddressed inequities that made the crisis land just that much harder on some other than others, or on some more than others. We are at a place where we've historically put critical infrastructure like hospitals, which basically help to determine who kept their power on. You know, that's one of the questions that we're going to need to answer moving forward. People have asked that question. Why did some folks keep their power? Those hospitals being in your neighborhood, it basically kept your power on throughout the course of the blackouts. I've said it before that lots and lots of our residents are one catastrophe away from homelessness. Monstrous plumbing bills and other repair costs that could be a catastrophe for some. That's something that we need to be looking forward to. People living in communities with absentee landlords, they're going to be facing the risk of going without clean water for weeks or even months. We also have to worry about people letting their guards down against COVID-19 in order to huddle up in their homes for warmth or to participate in relief work. We know that this crisis was not created by windmills. We know that reckless energy policy at the state level, combined with climate change denialism across the country, helped to lead to this. But we also understand the need to understand what it is that we as a city can do better to be prepared for when, not if, but when the next weather disaster comes our way. We need to consider what steps we need to take to reinforce resiliency in our systems. And we need to fill those gaps in our plans so that our responses can be more nimble, more proactive, and more accessible. The reality is we've waited far too long to take substantive action to avert a climate crisis. Our new reality is the increasing likelihood of 7 degrees one week and 78 degrees the next. We need to remember the last winter, the last winter we faced rolling blackouts was just 10 years ago. And it was followed by the worst drought and then the hottest summer since the 1950s. We can still work to prevent the worst damage, but climate justice demands that we be prepared to equitably and competently absorb it. Because we just need to accept the fact that unprecedented challenges are simply the new precedent. For more information about resources that are available to you right now, from food to water to emergency repair and information, head over to austintexas.gov/weatherinfo. That does it for this week's installment of Talk with Tasha. We'll be back here again live on Friday, March 12th to tackle the tough topic of homelessness in Austin. In the meantime, if you have questions or concerns, you can always reach out to me through the District 1 office. That's, as always, District 1, that's the number 1 at austintexas.gov. And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, keep it funky, but let's try to make it function. Take care, y'all.